Good morning to everyone. And first, I want to say thank you for bringing us back this year, because we actually kicked off Da Vinci, officially approved and agreed to actually fund the project and people to hold hands and get on this journey last year at HL7 in New Orleans. And it's been an amazing ride. And I've made Viet fact check me if I forget to thank anyone to make sure when he gets up to speak that he adds them in. But just to show the impact, I think, of what we've been able to accomplish in the short year that we've been working together, can you raise your hand if you've seen a Da Vinci presentation over the last year? Can you raise your hand? Keep your hand up. No, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. If you have actually been involved in a phone call, use case discovery work, raise your hand if you actually actively get on a phone once a week, or somebody from one of your direct teams gets on a phone call every week. So that's amazing. When we started last year, we thought we'd be lucky if we had 8 to 10 people come and play with us. The Apple announcement and then the next announcement, I believe, from our friends at Google or Berkshire Hathaway helped make us more popular, I think, than we originally anticipated, but it's been transformative. And the first slide I clear whenever I do a presentation, see, this is gonna be hard for me, is that we start every single meeting with our antitrust policy, the HL7 antitrust policy from ANSI that we follow, because everything that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, whether you're a member or not, is geared towards public consumption. All the work and the brain power from the SMEs, the competitors that come around the table and actually talk to each other, is destined to be brought into the standards development process and be available for anyone to pick up and use. And I think that that's critically important as we talk about what we're here to talk to you about today, which is really a call to action. We've been doing work over the last year. There's real work product, and Viet, Lisa, and Rick are going to tell you about what we're doing in the weeds, and I'm going to push on each of you to take it as a challenge, if you're not already involved, if you weren't one of those folks that raised your hand, to come and check out the resources that we've built and figure out how you can start to consume the things that are coming off of the trains that we're bringing into the station at HL7. So I think the previous speakers set the stage nicely for what we're talking about. At the end of the day, solving the challenge of value-based care and the data that needs to be shared between providers and payers is critically important. This is really a domain where there were no standards. The ability to bring a group of stakeholders from across all aspects, not just payers and providers, but the vendors and their partners that support them, to be able to look at what the actual use case problems are, the specific challenges, and solve from that standpoint, bring people around in a collaborative way to be able to force that change to happen. And really, at the end of the day, we're doing nothing more than driving the business requirements like you would in your own business to figure out what exactly needs to be done, what's minimally viable to make the data that needs to be exchanged possible, to bring those requirements into the HL7 development process so that we can write implementation guides that are specific to the problem that we're trying to solve. We have a lot of analogies out there. I prefer the recipe analogy, where somebody is, you're sitting in the kitchen and you can make pasta or a cake. I want to give you the instructions so that you can make the best cake possible. This is today I've done these presentations probably 50 times over the last year, telling people sort of what Da Vinci is and how we're working. I've been shifting the way that I'm talking a little bit to this audience since we started with you guys last year. This is a period of rapid transition in the market, right? We literally are asking providers to get across a transom in the way that they provide care to people on a day-to-day basis. And I think everyone needs to keep in mind as we go through this, that it's a point in time, and our ability as vendors, technologists, payers, and the provider organizations themselves to provide the providers and the provider staff in their organizations the ability to get through that transom, get across it, is critically important. And that means you're going to need to give them the tools in context, in workflow, in order to be able to do this. So really getting at the focus of what we're after, if we look at the work that we're doing, and this is something we did for our year-end wrap-up that we sent out to our Da Vinci public list, is over the course of the year, we've been able to really start to hack apart at these individual challenges in the marketplace, and that we expect when we get through the work I'm going to describe to you today, that at the end of next year, we will have laid the foundation for the core data to be able to flow. And I think, echoing what Chuck was saying, it's not we're going to be done. We're literally starting someplace, making incremental progress. Each one of these implementation guides that we build and the reference implementations that go along with it are a step in the right direction. And we're using essentially the power of the people in this room, your partners out in the market, to be able to make sure that we stay laser focused and that we continue to try and solve these problems that are, stopping the participants in the market to be able to really be able to focus on value. Because everybody always asks, who's actually a member? I always take time to clear the slide. As I mentioned at the beginning, I thought if we were going to have 8 to 10 partners, we would be great. We started with 9 use cases. There could be 1,000 use cases. One of the challenges, and I think this is a good audience to reflect on this, has been the ability to be able to get provider organizations to focus on putting resources on projects like Da Vinci, because there's so many competing forces. And one of the things we've done over the second half of this year, I'd say this is probably our biggest learning as a project team so far, is the ability to be able to empower our partners, the members of Da Vinci, to be able to tell the story about what it means to be involved in the standards development process, what it means to be able to build things at scale, that you'll be able to scale as an organization, and just to get to the right part of an organization to where that story really resonates. And so I have a couple different examples of where people have been able to bring provider members in, and slowly and surely each of our members over the course of the last year, payers, vendors, EHRs, have been working with their customer base to really find the right people at the right time, looking to exchange the specific data that are in value-based contracts with a particular IDN or provider organization. And I'm really excited because I went to pull together our year-end information, and we had gone from sort of 6 people that were in the process of onboarding and getting involved, and now there's about 14 providers that are in pipe that have really come to the table because they see this, just like the payers did a year ago, as the way that we're really going to be able to do something that's going to affect change, be able to get the right information at the point of contact that the actual provider or provider staff member needs it to really be able to make the right decision for a patient with all a clear understanding of all of their benefit information. So from a membership perspective, people have joined at different levels, and the only reason I'll call that out is the folks that are at the associate premier member actually get to bring a provider partner with them, and we've onboarded a few of those folks. Dr. Lane from Sutter Health is actually on our steering committee that sort of has cross-functional representation, and Rush Medical has been amazing, and they actually joined as a full partner. And then in addition to that, and this is actually on the HL7 website, so you don't have to take a picture of it. There's a link out on HL7 so people can go and find it. Then the sponsored members actually support our operating committee, and the members are the folks that you saw who had their hands raised that are actively participating and helping to find the use cases on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to hand it over to Viet, who's going to do a deep dive. Oh, actually, one more slide. Sorry, Viet. I'm going to set you up a little bit better. So when we look at the use cases themselves, we started out with 9 last year. They've morphed a little bit as we've learned, but essentially the things that are at the top row are really the work that's in progress that we've done, and Viet's going to talk about that in more detail. What we've realized as we've turned the corner into the next year and starting to figure out how these all fit together is that there are some themes that go across the use cases, and so I'm not going to do a deep dive into them here, but essentially we're building. There's sort of a natural, we need to do one thing and then we can do the next. There really hasn't been sort of a lot of voting of what's most important. It becomes apparent as we get into the actual business requirements of what we're trying to do. And so there's a track that's really around getting quality measure, data that's needed for quality measures, and making sure that you can collect that upfront prospectively in workflow, as opposed to this archival work that we do today, trying to find it inside of a medical record. The clinical data exchange, which Lisa and Rick will do a deeper dive on today, started as sort of one focus area, and as we started to do our working sessions around it, it became apparent that there were so many different aspects of which way the data needed to flow, what data needed to flow for what specific use cases, and they'll get into the details there, but we've been able to expand that. And then there's a track around really, before I order something, what do I need to know about this patient in order to place the order? And so coverage requirements, discovery, document templates, we'll actually do a deeper dive on that track in the Q2 session, all right, Q2 session tomorrow morning. And Viet and Bob Dieterle will actually spend time in that track, and they'll also be able to do a little bit deeper dive into our, I would call it success at this past weekend's Connect-a-thon, which is the first time we've really had folks in force working on the available use cases. So with that said, this is how we started last year. We honestly thought if we were lucky, we would get MRP and CRD done. We got enough funding because we got more popular than we expected, and started document templates and the eHealth record at the end of last year. When we look at this year and the work of where we're headed, we're basically building on the existing structure. We took our first use case, which we'll speak to a little bit more, and sort of made it more of a framework. We'll continue to work on coverage requirements, and then This reflects the work that was happening here around splitting up the eHealth record exchange into individual use cases, which Lisa and Rick will talk about in more detail. And we're talking about and looking at a couple proposed use cases, and we'll also cover lightly at the end of tomorrow's Q2 session the future use case work. And we've invited the other Da Vinci members that aren't payers to actually join us in the room tomorrow for that discussion as well. So with that, at the end of the day, you'll hear there's a theme that goes through all of our calls. No one that's involved in Da Vinci is interested in doing something that's an intellectual exercise or an ivory tower set of work, right? We are starting all of our work with what is the first place that you'll be able to use this, who is the partner that you're going to actually implement this with, and how do we get this work out to production? Because at the end of the day, the ability to have a provider be able to speak to multiple payers for the same use case using the same set of APIs and giving them the tools they need, reference implementations, and the actual implementation guide to be able to do that is what's going to actually get us to be able to leverage the power that you heard Chuck and Mark describe that FHIR has unleashed onto the market, and actually get us to the scale of interoperability that we're going to require to actually make value-based care a success.